Hello everyone. We are doing a series titled The I Am Sayings of Jesus. And thus far we have done 5 videos in this series, and this is the 6th one. And for this we turn our attention to the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 6, where Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Now, in each of Jesus's I am statements, there are 2 things that he does. Number 1, he is pointing to himself and he is revealing his identity. And number 2, he is trying to meet some important need that human beings have. Let me give you an example. Jesus saying, I am the light of the world. In this statement, not only is number 1, Jesus saying something about himself, his identity, he is also, number 2, meeting a particular need that the people of this world have. People are in different kinds of darknesses, especially spiritual darkness, and Jesus offers himself as the light of the world in order to meet this need. Now let's turn our attention to the 6th I am saying, the one that we have just read from John's Gospel, chapter 14. Now, in order to understand this, we must realize that Jesus is making this statement the day before his crucifixion. And he is in many ways trying to prepare his disciples for what is about to come. In the past few days or weeks, Jesus has been preparing his disciples for Good Friday and the Saturday to follow, and the confusions and the questions of those times. In fact, he has been telling them that he is going to be caught, he is going to be beaten up, and all of those kinds of things. And the disciples have become very, very confused as a result of that. There are several Bible passages that I can read in order to show you that, but I would take your attention to one passage, which is Mark's Gospel, chapter 10, verses 32 to 34. They were on their way up to Jerusalem, with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. We are going up to Jerusalem, he said, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise. So here is Jesus predicting what is going to happen to him in Jerusalem. He is describing the what is going to happen to him. He is describing how and where it is going to happen to him. And so when the disciples hear these things, they're very, very confused as to Jesus, why should these kinds of things happen to you? But Jesus is preparing them for what is coming ahead. In fact, if you go back to John's Gospel, and if you look at chapter 13, you would realize that Jesus is telling the disciples that he is going somewhere where they cannot go at this point. He is telling them that he is going to go away from them. John chapter 13, verse 33 first. My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come. So Jesus seems to be saying 2 things in this verse. Number 1, that he is going to leave them. And number 2, that he is going to a different place, and that they cannot follow him to that place. Look at Peter's response in verses 36 and 37. Simon Peter asked him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus replied, where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later. Peter asked, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. So you understand that the disciples were not able to understand what Jesus was saying, and hence the kind of questions that come from the mouth of Peter. Jesus is talking about, again, his going away and his going to a place where they cannot follow him now, but they can follow him later. Again, the point that I'm trying to make is that the disciples were thoroughly confused. And therefore, when we come to John chapter 14, the chapter in which Jesus makes the statement, I am the way, the truth, and the life, that chapter begins with verse 1, where we read Jesus saying, do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In other words, you are going to see things that you have not expected. You're going to hear things that you have not expected. Even though I have been trying to tell you about it, you have not understood it. But in the midst of all the chaos, in the midst of all the confusions of Good Friday and the questions that would torment your minds on the Saturday following Good Friday, I want you to remember the words that I am telling you now, which is, do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. Look at what he says in verse 2. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? So in this verse, Jesus for the first time now reveals to his disciples as to where he is going. He tells them that it is to his Father's house that he is going. And the disciples are not able to understand that at this point either. Jesus is speaking about heaven, and he is saying that I'm going to my Father's house in order to prepare a place for you. Verse 3, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. So Jesus says, after I'm done preparing the place for you, I'm going to come back for you. Jesus is speaking about his second coming. And he says, I will come for you, and then I will take you so that you can also be with me forever. Remember Jesus' words, I'm going, you cannot follow me now there, but later you will be with me there. That's what Jesus is talking about here as well. And in verse 4, we have this interesting statement that Jesus makes. He says, you know the way to the place where I'm going. In other words, you know where I am going, and you know the way to the place that I'm going. I'm going to my Father's house, and you know how to get there. But the following verses tell us that the disciples do not know where Jesus is going, and they do not know the way to the Father's house. Because in verse 5, Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you are going. So how can we know the way? Jesus, you are telling us that you are going to the Father's house, but we don't understand what you are talking about. Where is this Father's house? And since we don't know where you are going, how would we know the way to where you are going? And it is in that context, in verse 6, that we read, Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. In other words, Jesus is saying that he is the way to the Father. Jesus is saying that he is the only way to the Father. And Jesus is saying that he is the only way to the Father's house. In other words, he is the only way to heaven. A lot of people in this world today are searching. They're searching for truth. They're searching for life. They're searching for the true way. And Jesus' statement here is that I am the way, the truth, and the life. I want to share with you a beautiful prayer that is prayed in India for probably thousands of years. And it goes like this. Asatoma satgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mrityoma amritam gamaya. Translated into English, it is like this. Lead me from falsehood to truth. Lead me from darkness to light, and lead me from death to life. Now, whoever is praying this prayer recognizes that he or she is bound to falsehood, is bound to darkness, and is bound to death. But there is an aspiration within them. They want to attain truth, light, and life. But they also recognize that they, in their own strength, are not able to guide themselves from falsehood to truth, from darkness to light, and from death to life. And therefore, this prayer to the Almighty, lead me from falsehood to truth, lead me from darkness to light, lead me from death to life. Now, when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, in this context in John's Gospel, he is talking about being the way to the Father. He is talking about being the way to the Father's house. But I think in the context of this prayer, Jesus is also saying that I am the way from falsehood to truth. I am the way from darkness to light. And I am the way from death to life. And people might say, in this age of pluralism, people sometimes say that there are many ways to God. But Jesus here is speaking about Him alone being the way to God. If people tell you that there are many ways to God, I think one of the questions that you might want to ask them is, which God are you talking about? Are you talking about the triune God of the Bible? Or are you talking about the God of Islam? Or are you talking about the many gods of Greek religions or Hindu religion and so on? So when people say that there are many ways to God, they really do not understand that there are different gods in different religions. And people say that there are different ways to attain salvation. Again, the question to be asked is, which salvation are you talking about? Salvation according to Christianity, which is deliverance from the presence and the power and the penalty of sin? Or is it salvation according to Advaita Vedanta, which is self-realization, realizing that you are God? Or is it salvation according to some other religion? Because different religions provide different kinds of salvation. So to someone who says that it does not matter which religion you follow, because you will ultimately attain salvation, the question should be, which salvation are you talking about? Jesus' words here says that He is the only way to the Father. He is the only way to the Father's house. By the way, when Jesus came into this world, He was not searching for the way. He did not come to find the way. It is not like He found the way and then He points to the way and He says, that's the way. No, that's not the way things are in the Gospels. Jesus came to introduce Himself as the way for all of humanity to get to God. Similarly, Jesus is the truth. Jesus did not set out in search for truth. Jesus was not trying to find truth. He was not trying to point to some things that He had discovered as truth. He's not saying that here are 5 principles that point us to truth. He is pointing to Himself and He is saying that I am the truth. Similarly, Jesus did not come to find out what life means. He did not come to find out the meaning of life or the purpose of life. In fact, He introduces Himself as the source of life, as the source of eternal life, as the source of abundant life. And so Jesus' statements, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and other statements have tremendous implications for human beings. Jesus is in this passage telling His disciples, I am the way to the Father, I am the way to the Father's house, I am the truth. In fact, Jesus is the embodiment of truth. Jesus is truth personified, and Jesus says, I am the life as well. So to conclude, let me make 2 statements. Number 1, if you are a person who has never heard of Jesus, or you are in the quest for a truth, you are trying to find out the way to walk your life, or you're trying to search life itself out, Jesus' statement that I am the way, the truth, and the life is an invitation to you to put your trust and faith in Jesus, because He is the way to God, He is the way to salvation, He is the way to heaven, and the only way at that. And also, if you are a person who has already believed in Jesus, He is the GPS for your way. In order to get to heaven, we follow Jesus's words. We obey his words. We abide in him. We put our trust in him. We allow him to guide our lives because he is the way, he is the truth, and he is the life. And with that, we close our discussion on the sixth I am saying of Jesus. There is one more statement that is recorded in the Gospel of John, the seventh I am statement. We will discuss that in the next video. I believe you have been blessed by this. God bless you.